Moving deeply into the now. Don't seek yourself in the mind. Question. I feel that there is still a great deal I need to learn about the workings of my mind. Answer. No, you don't. The problems of mind cannot be solved on the level of the mind. Once you have understood the basic dysfunction, there isn't much else that you need to learn. Studying the complexities of the mind may make you a good psychologist, but doing so won't take you beyond the mind. You have already understood the basic mechanics of the unconscious state, identification with the mind. The ego's needs are endless. It feels vulnerable and threatened, and so lives in a state of fear and want. Once you know how the basic dysfunction operates, there is no need to explore all its countless manifestations. No need to make it into a complex personal problem. The ego, of course, loves that. It is always seeking for something to attach itself to in order to uphold and strengthen its illusory sense of self. And it will readily attach itself to your problems. This is why for so many people, a large part of their sense of self is intimately connected with their problems. Once this happened, the last thing they want is to become free of them. That would mean loss of self. There can be a great deal of unconscious ego investment in pain and suffering. So once you recognize the root of unconsciousness as identification with the mind, you step out of it. You become present. When you are present, you can allow the mind to be as it is without getting entangled in it. The mind in itself is not dysfunctional. It is a wonderful tool. Dysfunction sets in when you seek yourself in it and mistake it for who you are. It then becomes the egoic mind and takes over your whole life. And the delusion of time. Question. It seems almost impossible to disidentify from the mind. Answer. Here is the key and the delusion of time. Time and mind are inseparable. Remove time from the mind and it stops. To be identified with your mind is to be trapped in time. The compulsion to live almost exclusively through memory and anticipation. This creates an endless preoccupation with past and future, and an unwillingness to honor and acknowledge the present moment and allow it to be. The compulsion arises because the past gives you an identity and the future holds the promise of salvation, of fulfillment in whatever form. Both are illusions. Time is not precious because it is an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of time, the now. That is precious indeed. The more you are focused on time, the more you miss the now, the most precious thing there is. Why is it the most precious thing? Firstly, because it is the only thing. It's all there is. The eternal present is the space within which your whole life unfolds, the one factor that remains constant. Life is now. There was never a time when your life was not now. Nor will there ever be. Secondly, the now is the only point that can take you beyond the limited confines of the mind. It is your only point of access into the timeless and formless realm of being. Nothing exists outside the now. Question: aren't past and future just as real than the present? After all, the past determines who we are, as well as how we perceive and behave in the present. And our future goals determine which actions we take in the present. You haven't yet grasped the essence of what I'm saying because you are trying to understand it mentally. The mind cannot understand this. Only you can. Have you ever experienced, done, thought, or felt anything outside the now? Do you think you ever will? Is it possible for anything to happen or be outside the now? The answer is obvious. Nothing ever happened in the past. It happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future. It will happen in the now. What you think of as the past is a memory trace. When you remember the past, you reactivate a memory trace. The future is an imagined now, a projection of the mind. When the future comes, it comes as the now. When you think about the future, you do it now. Past and future obviously have no reality of their own. The essence of what I am saying here cannot be understood by the mind. The moment you grasp it, there is a shift in consciousness from mind to being, from time to presence. Suddenly, everything feels alive, radiates energy, emanates being. The key to the spiritual dimension. In life-threatening emergency situation, the shift in consciousness from time to presence sometimes happens naturally. The personality that has a past and a future momentarily recedes and is replaced by an intense conscious presence. Whatever response is needed then arises out of that state of consciousness. The reason why some people love to engage in dangerous activities is that it forces them into the now. Slipping away from the present moment, even for a second, may mean death. Unfortunately, they come to depend on a particular activity to be in that state. But you don't need to climb the north face of the Aiga. You can enter that state now. Since ancient times, spiritual masters of all traditions have pointed to the now as the key to the spiritual dimension. Despite this, it seems to have remained a secret. It is certainly not taught in churches and temples. If you go to a church, you may hear reading from the Gospels such as, "Take no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself," or "Nobody who puts his hands to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." Or you might hear the passage about the beautiful flowers that are not anxious about tomorrow, but live with ease in the timeless now and are provided for abundantly by God. The depth and radical nature of these teachings are not recognized. No one seems to realize that they are meant to be lived and so bring about a profound inner transformation. The whole essence of Zen consists in walking along the razor's edge of now, to be so utterly, so completely present that no problem, no suffering, nothing that is not who you are in your essence can survive in you. In the now, in the absence of time, all your problems dissolve. Suffering needs time. It cannot survive in the now. Lin Tai would often raise his finger and slowly ask, "What at this moment is lacking?" A powerful question that does not require an answer on the level of the mind. It is designed to take your attention deeply into the now. A similar question in Zen tradition is this: if not now, when? The now is also central to the teaching of Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam. Sufis have a saying, "The Sufi is the son of time present." Rumi, the great poet, declares, "Past and future veil God from our sight. Burn up both of them with fire." Assessing the power of the now. Question. A moment ago, when you talked about the eternal present and the unreality of past and future, I found myself looking at that tree outside the window. I had looked at it a few times before, but this time it was different. The external perception had not changed much, except that the color seemed brighter and more vibrant. But there was now an added dimension to it. This is hard to explain. Can something like this ever be more than a fleeting glimpse? Answer. You were free of time for a moment. You moved into the now and therefore perceived the tree without the screen of mind. The awareness of being became a part of your perception. With the timeless dimension comes a different kind of knowing. A knowing that does not destroy the sacredness and the mystery of life, but contains a deep love and reverence for all that is, a knowing of which the mind knows nothing. The mind cannot know the tree. It can only know facts or information about the tree. My mind cannot know you, only labels, judgments, facts, and opinions about you. Being alone knows directly. There is a place for mind and mind knowledge. It is in the practical element of day-to-day living. However, when it takes over all aspects of your life, it becomes a monstrous parasite. You have had a glimpse of how the timeless can transform your perceptions, but an experience is not enough, no matter how beautiful or profound. What is needed and what we are concerned with is a permanent shift in consciousness. So break the old pattern of present moment denial and present moment resistance. Make it your practice to withdraw attention from past and future whenever they are not needed. Step out of the time dimension as much as possible in everyday life. If you find it hard to enter the now directly, start by observing the habitual tendency of your mind to want to escape from the now. Be present as the watcher of your mind, of your thoughts and emotions, as well as your reactions in various situations. Be at least as interested in your reactions as in the situation or person that causes you to react. Notice also how often your attention is in the past or future. Don't judge or analyze what you observe. Watch the thought, emotion. Don't make a personal problem out of them. You will then feel something more powerful than any of these things that you observe. The still observing presence itself behind the content of your mind, the silent watcher. Intense presence is needed when certain situations trigger a reaction with a strong emotional charge, such as when your self-image is threatened, a challenge comes into your life that triggers fear, things go wrong, or an emotional complex from the past is brought up. In those instances, the tendency is for you to become unconscious. The reaction or emotion takes you over. You become it. You act it out. Is the reactive pattern the mind in its habitual survival mode? Identification with the mind gives it more energy. Observation of the mind withdraws energy from it. Identification with the mind creates more time. Observation of the mind opens up the dimension of the timeless. The energy that is withdrawn from the mind turns into presence. Once you can feel what it means to be present, it becomes much easier to simply choose to step out of the time dimension whenever time is not needed for practical purpose and move more deeply into the now. This does not impair your ability to use time when you need to refer to it for practical matters, nor does it impair your ability to use your mind. In fact, it enhances it. When you do use your mind, it will be sharper, more focused,